The Venezuelan delegation to the dialogues with the United States denounced Washington's non-compliance with the agreements signed during the talks held in Italy and Qatar. In Argentina, national deputies from different political spaces met with students and pledged to participate in the Great National March of Universities to take place next week in defense of public higher education in the country. And the Commissioner General of the United Nations Agency UNRWA, Philippe Lazzarini, said Israel has not provided any evidence of the alleged presence of Hamas militants in the organization's teams. Hello and welcome to From the South. My name is Alejandra Garcia from teleSUR Studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. The Venezuelan delegation to the dialogues with the United States denounced Washington's non-compliance with the agreements signed during the talks held in Italy and Qatar. The Minister of Foreign Affairs of Venezuela, Ivan Gil, affirmed that the sanctions are illegal measures and the last decision is one more brush to seek to damage the Venezuelan economy and the electoral process, but that it will have a very low effect. Gil pointed out that the U.S. is a government that has no word, that mocked the interlocutors and the counterpart, demonstrating that it is impossible to reach agreements with some who breaks his word. The diplomat assured that these measures will not have much effect on the economy of the Caribbean country and that he rejects any pretension of control by the White House.
The government of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela once again rejects the pretension of the government of the United States of America to monitor, tutelage, control and manipulate the Venezuelan oil industry through its illegal policy of imposing coercive measures and licenses. Practices in accordance with the colonialist vision that the free and sovereign people of Venezuela will never recognize and accept. Yesterday, the government of the United States consummated its policy of violation of the commitments assumed under the facilitation of the State of Qatar. Signed between the Undersecretary of State Brian Nichols and the President of the National Assembly Jorge Rodriguez, last September 28 in Doha, which implied the complete elimination of the illegal unilateral coercive measures at the time of the convocation of the constitutional presidential elections.
The Minister of Foreign Affairs of Venezuela, Ivan Gil, stated that the coercive measures imposed by the United States have a negative impact on the global energy market.
The United States is not hurting an independent Venezuela that has learned to overcome its aggressions. On the contrary, it is hurting any attempt to normalize bilateral relations. The international energy market that is seriously affected today by Washington's warmongering impulses, and above all, it is hurting its own investments and interests in the Venezuelan oil industry. For mere electoral calculations, once again the United States breaks its word and tries in vain, with economic pressures and with the violence of the minority political sectors of the extreme right that receive its support, to harm the Venezuelan electoral process on July 28.
Venezuela hosts the Encounter for a World Social Alternative organized by the Bolivarian Alliance for the Peoples of Our America People's Trade Agreement, ALBA TCP. More than 500 national and international guests will debate and propose an agenda of concrete actions to confront imperialist actions during a gathering that aims at unity among the peoples based on the principles of solidarity for the consolidation of a new social alternative. The main activity of these first days called the Principle of Unity as a transforming element and will be headed by the Executive Secretary of ALBA, Jorge Arreaza. The closing of the event will be on April 19th, when the meeting entitled Hyper-Imperialism and a World Social Alternative is set to take place. Also in Venezuela, the Minister of Foreign Affairs Ivan Gil on his social network X posted a statement issued by the Venezuelan government rejecting the illegal policy of imposing coercive measures by the United States government, which seeks to monitor everything related to Venezuelan crude. The minister stressed Venezuela once again rejects the pretension of the government of the United States of America to monitor, tutelage, control and manipulate the Venezuelan oil industry through its illegal policy of imposing coercive measures and licenses, practices in accordance with a colonialist vision that the free and sovereign people of Venezuela will never recognize and accept. In Ecuador, also on Wednesday, university students who were demonstrating against the power cuts and in rejection of the popular consultation promoted by the government of Daniel Noboa were violently repressed by the police authorities. In this way, the students who gathered to protest in front of the Central University of Ecuador against the politics of the current government denounced that the police assaulted them in order to silence their voices. In turn, the reports of the authorities of the order in Quito reported no serious injuries, but the young people condemned the intervention of the police forces. In this context, the government of Ecuador suspended for 2 days on Thursday and Friday the public and private work due to the electricity crisis caused by a historical deficit in the reservoirs of the hydroelectric power plants, which resulted in blackouts of up to 13 hours a day that could bring losses in the millions. In this sense, the presidency informed in a communique that the decision is also due to acts that it described as corrupt and unprecedented, while President Daniel Noboa asked for the resignation of the Minister of Energy, Andrea Arrobo, who apparently, together with other officials, intentionally hid information from the Energy Crisis Committee.
We have initiated an investigation for sabotage, because in certain areas, in certain power plants there has been sabotage.
Argentine national deputies from different political spaces met with the students and committed themselves to participate in the Great National March of Universities in the country to take place next week. During the meeting, the legislators asked the national government to adopt measures to ensure the full functioning of the country's universities. They also analyzed the situation of university education, referring to the deep crisis it is going through due to the 72% reduction of its budget. So far, the cutback has had a serious impact on the salaries of all personnel, on infrastructure, on scholarships, and even on its institutes and hospitals. Let's take a short break, but remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you will find news in different formats, news updates, and more. Other stories coming up, stay with us. Welcome back. On Wednesday, Haiti's resigned government published the decree appointing the members of the Presidential Transitional Council. The publication comes after political parties, groups and alliances with representatives in the Presidential Council denounced the bad faith of the government in dragging its feet to pass the time and mark the end of the government of Prime Minister Ariel Henry, who resigned in the midst of the crisis in the country. The publication of this document was one of the demands of the local political structures, the Caribbean community, Canada and the United States, in order to achieve a peaceful and orderly transition in Haiti. Let us review then who are the members of the finally formalized Presidential Transition Council. Emmanuel Vertilaires is a lawyer, member of the PD Dessalines party. Formerly, he was an examining magistrate at the Court of First Instance of the Cap Haitian. He resigned in 2022 as he considered that the principles of independence, impartiality and legality were not being complied with at the Superior Council of the Judiciary. He is currently Administrative and Financial Director of the Public University of Cap Haitian. Smith Agustin is the representative of the coalition committed to development. He is a lawyer, doctor in sociology, and a diplomat by training. He is a specialist in political and social issues, was ambassador of Haiti to the Dominican Republic and senior official of the United Nations organization from 2009 to 2014. Another leading member is Louis-Gerald Giselant, a doctor by profession and former senator of the Famille-Lavalais party of former President Jean-Bertrand Aristide. In 2019, he was part of the movement New Unified Orientation to Liberate Haiti. The Commissioner General of the United Nations Agency for Palestine Refugees, UNRWA, Philippe Lazzarini, said that Israel has not provided any evidence of the alleged presence of Hamas militants in the organization's teams. Following Israel's accusations, countries such as the United Kingdom, Canada, Germany, the Netherlands and France, under the leadership of the United States, suspended their contributions. Meanwhile, other countries such as Brazil decided to increase their contributions. Almost 2 months after the accusation, the organization has not received any evidence. On the other hand, it does not have evidence of the torture inflicted on its personnel and of the arbitrary detentions to which they were subjected. Let's get into some context on this topic. In January, Israel accused 12 UNRWA staff members of alleged participation on the October 7th attacks. This number only represents 0.001% out of the total UNRWA employees in Gaza. At the moment, no evidence has been shown to back these claims. Later, the claims came to light on the same day the ICJ demanded Israel to take all necessary measures to prevent its troops from committing genocide in Gaza. Following this, more than 50 donors, including the U.S., suspended their funding to the United Nations agency in the wake of the allegations jeopardizing the United Nations operations. At last, UNRWA is currently the backbone of humanitarian operations in Gaza, as well as one of the main sources of information on Israeli actions in the area. On the verge of the United Nations Security Council's meeting on the Middle East on Thursday, information is revealed about an alleged plot between the United States and Ecuador to prevent the creation of the Palestinian state. Based on unclassified State Department cables, The Intercept, a U.S. media outlet, claims that Washington is secretly pressuring Ecuador and Security Council members to reject Palestine's bid to become a full member of the world body. Investigations exposing President Joseph Biden's lies about his supposed promise of a two-state solution reveals that Ecuador has been ordered to pressure Malta and other nations, including France, to vote against Palestine. On Wednesday, in the framework of the Palestinian Prisoners' Day, local and international human rights defenders denounced that in Israel prisons there are still 9,500 Palestinian citizens kidnapped. In this regard, the statement said that out of the total of kidnapped, 200 are children, more than 80 are women, and it also added that many have been tortured. Before the October 7th, the overall figure was 5,200, almost all of them in administrative detention, a measure inherited from the British colonial command that keeps them in prison without charges of legal proceedings for an indefinite period. Palestinian Prisoners' Day is a day of solidarity celebrated on April 17th, the day on which the first Palestinian prisoners was released. As part of the framework of the international protest for the Day of Palestinian Political Prisoners, Argentines will mobilize on Thursday in defense of Palestinian life in the Plaza de Mayo, a day after Uruguayans protested in front of the Israeli embassy in Montevideo in solidarity with the Palestinian kidnapped in Israel prisons. In this sense, on Wednesday, Uruguayan people demanded the release of the prisoners and denounced that the conflict in Gaza is not a war but a genocide, in addition to the fact that the children in Gaza are not a threat. On the other hand, the Argentine Committee for Palestine, together with other social organizations, will congregate on Thursday in Buenos Aires to reject the support of the Argentine current president to Israel and to demand once again a ceasefire in Gaza. The Syrian people celebrated on April 17th the 78th anniversary of their independence from the French colonialism. Authorities noted that the commemoration takes place amid a growing determination and willingness to crack down terrorism encouraged by the West. Let's delve into further details with our correspondent Hisham Wanous from Damascus.
On a day like today, the troops of the Arab army reaffirm they won't lower their guard in defense of the independence achieved by their ancestors in 1946. A patriotic duty that they have been fulfilling through the battle they have been waging for 13 years against Western neo-colonialism, represented by terrorism, separatist gangs, foreign invading troops, and the Israeli occupation.
On this time we congratulate our brave army, and we commend its bold work in the homeland defense and in confronting all Western plots against our beloved Syria. In fact, our army accomplishes this task in cooperation with allies and friendly forces operating on Syrian soil at the request of the Syrian state. And we assure that the army will spare no effort to keep Syria at the highest, proud, sovereign and independent level.
Meanwhile, citizens are playing their role in this battle, working with their own resources and with the economic, humanitarian and social support of allied countries, in view of Western coercive measures, which are among the tools used by neo-colonialism to subdue the free Syrian people.
We reaffirm on this date that neither terrorism nor its Western sponsors nor the blockade nor all its criminal tools can break our will to live and our faith with a better future, because faith has always accompanied us as a people, and will keep the faith. And we are a people who love life and who disseminate civilization, and we will continue to do so despite all adversities.
Enemy's defeat is unavoidable. So affirms the Syrian people on this new anniversary of their independence, ratifying their determination to follow the example of their ancestors and redeeming their homeland with their lives.
Hisham Wanous, teleSUR, Damascus, Syria.
We have a final short break coming up, but before we invite you to join our WhatsApp community for our English-speaking audience, you can scan the QR code on screen to join directly and share the link to reach more people. Constant news coverage of Latin America and the Caribbean, as well as the rest of the world. Stay connected and informed with teleSUR. Final short break. Don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. In Kenya on Wednesday, doctors and health workers continue to demand salary and labor improvements in their fifth week of protest. Precisely in the framework of demonstrations, the health sector of that African nation accuses the authorities of failing to comply with the agreements established in 2017 and demand salary increases and better working conditions. In this sense, the activists affirmed that they will not give in to intimidations and threats and that they will continue with mobilizations until they achieve their objectives. In turn, the government calls for calm and urged the health professionals to rejoin and fulfill their duties in the face of dozens of patients who have been left without access to medical services.
I must say that the healthcare in this country as we speak is in shambles, and that is a clear indication of the foot-dragging attitude of the government in solving this crisis. We feel that the government doesn't care. The government is celebrating in meetings, in seminars, and in conferences while Kenyans are dying, while doctors and healthcare workers are on the streets. They are all not on the streets because they love being on the streets. They are on the streets because there's a swelling disillusionment in the hospitals.
Paris 2024 will be the first Olympic Games with gender equality, and to reach that figure, several quotas for the women's branch were increased. In the year 1900, the city of Paris hosted the second edition of the Olympic Games, where for the first time women participated. Now, 124 years later, the Paris 2024 Olympic Games will have a participation of 5,250 women and 5,250 men competing for medals. The reason is that the International Olympic Committee, IOC, decided to distribute the qualification quotas equally. The participation of women in the event under the 5 rings has been increasing over the years, and recently in Tokyo 2020, the female participation was 47.8%. Now in Paris, we'll have an equal number of women and men competing, which means that for the first time, the figure of 50% female participation has been reached. On Wednesday, Real Madrid beat Manchester City on penalties in the second leg of the Champions League quarter-finals. In this way, to the 15th cup of the most important football event in the European League remains the objective of the Madrid manager Carlo Ancelotti. For their part, the defending champions could not materialize at home, and in this way broke their plans for a back-to-back championship. In the upcoming semi-final round, Real Madrid will face Bayern Munich. It should be remembered that this match was a rematch because Manchester City eliminated the white team in the last edition. We have come to the end of this news brief, but you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net and join us on social media, Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm Alejandra Garcia. Thank you for watching.